Don't you hate pants?
Here's Brunette. Brunette's in. Andrew Brunette shot score. Andrew Brunette in sudden death overtime, and Minnesota is moving on.
I won't need my high school diploma anymore. I am smart. I am smart. I am smart. I am smart. S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-R-T.
Played here by Danny deeply, and out they come 2-on-1. This is Niederreiter holding onto it, and he scores! Nino Niederreiter wins the series for the Minnesota Wild.
Welcome to the Giles and the Goalies podcast. I believe this is episode number 38 for those counting at home. I am Giles, of course, the resident namesake here on this podcast, joined as always by Ben Remington.
Hello.
Ben. Did you have a nice week? Maybe better than last week?
It wasn't bad. The late games kind of suck, having to work the next morning and whatnot, but I didn't work on Friday, so the Thursday night game wasn't so bad for me. And the Saturday matinee, that's just kind of weird, It's kind of... It feels like out of place, not that I'm like, staunchly against hockey ever being played in the afternoon, but it just kind of sets up for a weird day, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I probably enjoyed that afternoon start probably a little too much than most did, but it was just nice to get that done and out of the way and go do something else on a Saturday night.
Yeah, I did my drinking after the game, so.
I mean, a professional would just have started during the game. Why not?
Might as well.
I guess I'll jump right into it. Another wonderfully awful week from the Wild. They lost, 3-1 in Anaheim, and then they quickly followed that up with a win against the Pacific leading Kings 3-0, and then they followed that up on Saturday with kind of an uneven performance against the Sharks and a 4-3 loss. What are your overall thoughts this week?
It's just kind of typical of this team. Like, we can't really get a good gauge as to where they're at because I don't want to say they're wildly inconsistent, but they're kind of wildly inconsistent, really. The Ducks game didn't look great, didn't look awful, but didn't look great. And then they looked really good in the Kings game. I mean, that's the best this team has looked, since Christmas, basically, since they were on that point streak in mid-December. And then, like you said, Saturday was just kind of an up-and-down game. Like, they looked really good at times. But in the grand scheme of things, they kind of got beat around a little bit, despite a couple of stretches of good play by them. And they held the lead for I think most of the game, but then surrendered 2 goals within about 100 seconds, and end up coughing up one with about 100 seconds left in the game as well. So or about 3 minutes left in the game actually. So yeah, just kind of up and down. You don't really know what to think of this team. I mean, it's mostly negative, obviously, because they've lost 6 of 7 now, but it's just that Kings game is like, you don't want to call it a fluke because they did look good, but it kind of feels a little bit fluky right now, depending on what they do against Arizona tomorrow, because they've lost every other game they've played in over the basically since almost the new year. So I don't know what to think. It's encouraging, that they had good stretches, but it's also in the big picture, it just kind of sucks.
I mean, I guess just kind of looking at their overall schedule here in the last month, and it just feels like really this slump they've just really played down with their opponents.
Oh yeah,
it's just been kind of a lackluster schedule, and they've just kind of let it get away from them and losing to Philadelphia and New Jersey and Buffalo and the Jets who are struggling and the Preds who were struggling and the Sharks and the Ducks, teams in the Pacific who certainly aren't great right now. And
right.
It just feels like they've just let so many points slip away that now they're just destined to be a wild card team because that was really a soft spot in the schedule you probably need many points out of.
Yeah, agreed. And now, as of yesterday, the Avalanche have now moved ahead of them in the wild card standings, which is, a little dumbfounding and very frustrating, obviously. So that's it's an unfortunate footnote to the weekend.
That, first of all, I hate that. Second of all, they really got me going this morning when I saw their tweet fired at the Wild. Jerks.
They tweeted at the Wild this morning?
It was last night after the game, I think.
Uh-huh.
It was I don't know, I'm surprised you haven't seen it.
No, I didn't actually.
It's a gift from the last Captain America movie where he just keeps lapping, I forget the guy's name, but it's just titled On Your Left as he's running by, and oh boy, that...
You don't talk smack like that in January. I mean, come on.
That gave me quite the hate. My first cup of coffee. Come on, cut it out.
Yeah, gifts like that, I mean, that kind of, stupid, cheeky stuff in January, it is, that's all it is stupid, cheeky stuff in January. That's somebody in the Twitter account trying to get a rise out of people, and that's all that is. So, you don't brag about standings in January. You just kind of put your head down and dig. And if you're not doing that, then yeah.
I looked this up here because I was like, how is Colorado winning so much? Because they're terrible.
Yes.
They are
very terrible.
They should not be flying up the standings like this. And so I went over to War and Ice because you can kind of filter their stats by dates and whatnot. So I'm just looking at January here. Obviously, small sample size, but the Avs are still bad and they're still winning. And it just makes no sense to me.
Well, that's kind of how they won a division title a couple years ago. So
they have the fourth worst Corsi for percentage in the NHL in January. The Wild are sixth, and sandwiched in between those two teams is St. Louis.
Oh.
So you've got all these Central Division teams just bringing it. Surprisingly, the team second to worst, this is off topic, is the Florida Panthers, who can't lose right now.
You know what that means? It means that there's fancy stats are overrated. That's what that means.
And then, but you look at their shooting percentage at 5-on-5, it is 11%.
Wow. That's a little high.
They're going to regress.
Yeah. The Panthers or the Avs?
The Panthers.
Oh, yeah.
But that's why I said it was a little off topic. But
no, I agree.
I don't know. Obviously, Colorado has to be doing something right on their power play. This winning streak is just ridiculous. And
yeah.
Anyway, back to the Wild. Their possession stats are awful. Their shooting percentage is awful.
Yeah.
The only thing that is going right, as we've talked about, I think more depthly last week, was goaltending.
Yep.
They're getting good goaltending. This last week we saw Darcy Kemper twice and Devin Dubnyk just once, which was kind of a nice change of pace. I didn't think that was going to happen at all, but here we are.
Well, I understand starting Kemper after the shutout, on Thursday, but that's what this team has to do in order to win a game, is to shut the other team out, basically. And that's what we're running into. It's like this team is so offensively inept, even though they've scored 3 goals 2 games in a row now. It just feels like they need a whirlwind performance out of their goaltender to win a game, and that even goes for Saturday too. Like I don't think that I wouldn't put a whole lot of blame on Kemper, because I think a couple of those goals he had zero chance at, and certainly a couple of them were a little fluky too. I mean, that first one especially, that basically Brodin tapped in himself. You can't put those on Kemper, but he needed to have an otherworldly game in order for them to win that game on Saturday, because there was a couple of goals that he had no shot at, but there was a couple of goals that maybe he could have stopped and he needed to in order for that team to win, and that's just kind of what we're looking at right now. I mean, it's basically like the goalie has to stand on his head or we're boned.
Yeah, yep. It was Dustin Nelson. I saw him fire something into Twitter today saying that kind of a moral victory, I guess, is the Wild have scored 3 goals in the last 2 games, like you alluded to there, and that was something they weren't doing at all in the last 7, 8, 9 games. So I guess hopefully that would continue. But do we have a cameo?
Yeah, my dog's. There's probably somebody in the general vicinity of my neighborhood, so he's freaking out.
Is he caged up like the cat?
No, he is not. He's running around the living room like an idiot.
Nice.
Yeah, as dogs are wont to do.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of looking ahead to this next week. It's a short All-Star week, so just one game for the Wild, and it's a home game Monday night against Arizona, another Pacific Division team. They should. They should be getting 2 points from, but I know very well that they will do their due diligence to try and piss those away. Yeah,
Arizona is a pretty decent team actually, and so it's not like it's a gimme at all. Arizona isn't the Arizona of last year. They don't seem to be interested in the Austin Matthews sweepstakes, which credit to them, I guess, but. That seems like they're running into teams who are playing well right now, and for some reason that's the entire Pacific Division. I don't know why, but that's just kind of how it's working out. So, that's not going to be an easy game, and even Jared Stoll yesterday in the post game said that they're not playing well at home right now, and they're very aware of that. So that just kind of adds another layer onto the difficulty of this game, and that they're just not playing well right now, so, and especially at home, and that's something that should stick in a lot of people's craw, because this team usually, historically at least, is a very good home team, and the fact that they've been laying eggs on home ice is really concerning. So I don't know. I don't want to say that this game sets the tone for their second half or anything like that. I don't know if that's the case. I mean, I think it's just it's a out of division game, and it's kind of a getaway day kind of thing. It feels like so. I wouldn't have super high expectations for this game if I was a Wild fan, So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but just feels kind of like a let's get this over with kind of game more than a hey let's set the tone going into the second half kind of thing.
What kills me is they'll go in, they'll have a terrible effort in this game, lose, and then they'll just be like, yep, everybody's just thinking about vacation for the next week.
Pretty much.
And then they'll come back on that Tuesday against the Islanders out of the All-Star break, and then they'll have another terrible performance.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll just be like, well, we had a week off.
Yeah.
Guys didn't practice a whole lot and blah, blah, blah. And
right.
The excuses are just set on a tee for them.
Yeah.
So,
ignoring the fact that the other team is playing under the exact same conditions.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, it is frustrating. It gets really irritating because they do have. It feels like they have like a goodie bag full of excuses for everything. They've got like a Batman utility belt of excuses where they just kind of like flip one out whenever they see fit, and it's just really frustrating because it's like when this team is playing well, there is no excuses for anything. Like they don't obviously need any excuses, but as soon as they start to hit the skids a little bit, it's never like, oh yeah, we just play like absolute dog ass. And it's always like they'll say that to a point. They're like, oh, we didn't play well enough, and then they'll qualify it with, well, but the ice was slow, or we had a couple of days off, or we just couple of guys got the runs, that kind of thing. Where it's just like we don't need to hear that. Like you're playing like crap. We can see you're playing like crap. The players are playing like crap, and that's bottom line, end of story. Like I just don't want to hear anything else from anybody. Like even people who are blaming this on Mike Yeo somehow, like he's not a rah-rah cheerleader screamer type coach. No, and yeah, his deployment frustrates me too. I don't think he's doing a great job with deployment. He still is absolutely in love with a group of about 5 or 6 guys. But like I tweeted the other day, name a player on this team that is playing really well right now. And if your only answer is Jarrett Stoll, then that's kind of your explanation in and of itself. Nobody on this team is playing well. Nobody. I mean, except for maybe Dubnyk and Dubnyk and Kemper had a solid couple of games, but it's like, if you want to put it on Mike Yeo, then sure, point me to a player that he's not playing enough right now. Point me to a player who's on the bench and is just killing it when he gets limited ice time. There isn't one. I really wish that was the case because that's an easy fix, and maybe somehow somebody could point that out to Mike Yeo, but that's not the case. Parisi had 1 goal this month. Palmer, Granlund, slumping. Vanek isn't even shooting the puck anymore. Mika Koivu has cooled considerably after having probably the best first half of his career. Even Nino is slumping pretty hard right now. So Charlie Coyle is maybe the only player who's doing anything noteworthy offensively. And, it's frustrating when he's not on the ice in situations where you think maybe he should be, like the end of the game yesterday. But, that's about it. That's the only, complaint that I could possibly have for this team outside of the players are playing like crap. And that's the end of story. And if you want to call out Mike Yeo's motivation, maybe. But I've just never been a big guy where it's like, this coach, whatever, around 40 or so, has to tell a bunch of 30-year-olds and 24-year-olds that they need to play harder hockey. Like, that shouldn't be the case. I think that there is some motivation to coaching, but it really shouldn't be like a feast or famine kind of thing. You should either be motivated or you're not. Like, if you need your coach to motivate you to play, then you're already screwed.
Someone who kind of fell into the, producing well but not getting enough ice time in the last, year or two was Jason Zucker, and he really kind of fell off the face of the earth.
Big time.
Which, I was thinking about this morning. I was like, you really haven't noticed him really at all in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
I mean, the only thing that I can... go ahead.
Well, just with his speed, that should never be the case.
Right.
Well, yeah, there'd probably be a couple games where, you don't see him, but, you should be noticing him at some point over a 3-week stretch. And he just hasn't been there.
Nope.
I don't know what's going on, but it just seems really weird to me that he really fell off the face of the earth.
Yeah, and I'm not a Zucker hater at all. I think he's fantastic. And like you said, because of that speed, I mean, he should be an absolute weapon for this team. But the only thing I remember him doing in the last, month or two is occasionally, I'd say about every other game, he gets an alley-oop breakaway all by himself, and then he botches the shot. Either he tries the Koivu move and misses wide, or he tries something else and gets stuff somehow. So it's like he's just not finishing at all, and that's one thing where it's like people swear up and down that he needs to be on the power play. It's like I don't see it. He doesn't have a tremendous shot. It's not like he is a super gifted passer. Really his one tool is speed. And don't get me wrong, I mean, that's super useful. And I would like to see more of him if and when they hit more 3-on-3 overtime, because I don't think we've seen enough of him there. But I see people like, he should be on the first power play unit. No, he's not. I'm sorry, but he's just not that gifted of a scorer. And we're seeing that right now. If he was, he would be converting those alley-oop breakaways that he's getting. He's not. And that goes for the whole team right now. I mean, they're just not finishing, and finishing is what good power plays do, and that's why the power play stinks, because we've got an entire team chock full of passers, and the only guys on the team that are willing to shoot, Jason Pominville is so freaking snake bitten that he can't possibly hit the back of the net right now to save his life, and even guys like Nino and And to a lesser extent, Coyle isn't struggling, but Nino, same thing. I mean, he's just very unlucky right now and shooting at a super low percentage. And, there's not much you can do for that, but that's just kind of embodies the struggles that they're going through.
The only guy who's finishing right now is Jared Stoll. Put him on the power.
Yeah, that's been weird. I don't think by any stretch that he's any kind of, offensive force, but it's just weird that, he's scoring kind of goal scorer goals. He's not even really getting garbage goals. He's actually shooting the puck and scoring, which is bizarre to see out of a Wild player to begin with, but then let alone out of a guy who's supposed to be a crappy fourth liner that every blogger in the state hates. So I don't know, that's a weird deal, and I think maybe it's just kind of a West Coast flash in the pan kind of thing, but I don't know. He's on the third line for right now, and I guess it's working. So I don't know. It isn't working because they're getting beat, but it's working in that he's scoring, for once.
What the hell? Sorry, I looked up from my computer. I had the TV on NHL Network, and there was a commercial for nose cleaner.
Oh, dude, the commercials on NHL Network are just are they not the worst of the worst?
Weirder and weirder.
It's just I don't understand how is it the ratings are that bad, because every single commercial on NHL Network is a mini infomercial. It's that crappy late night advertising that you see on really super late on legitimate cable channels.
Yeah.
But it's all day long there, catheters and diabetes medication and stuff to clean your feet with and gross crap like that. I just don't understand why the NHL can't find worthwhile advertising. Other than Discover showing us the same 4 commercials for the last 3 years.
Well, this just kind of goes back to my whole point. I don't know if I made it last week or a few weeks ago, but the NHL is terrible at marketing.
They're awful. God, they're awful.
This shouldn't surprise anyone that their commercials on NHL Network are just weird like that. But
you'd hope with the MLB Network takeover that they would kind of refine things a little bit, but I don't know how much of that is actually sunk in yet, because I know that was kind of be a gradual kind of thing, but I don't know.
Anyway, I guess we kind of covered our thoughts on the Wild last week and this week. I guess we'll kind of hit on one more relevant piece of Wild news, which came this morning, thankfully.
Mm-hmm.
I like when news comes out before we podcast, not after, like it does sometimes.
That Sunday morning news dump, love it.
Yeah. I gotta look it up here again. It was the Boston Globe. The writer's name escapes me, but he wrote a piece on Louis Eriksson's future in Boston, and he mentioned almost instantly in the article that the Wild stood out more than any other team of being one who would like to acquire him should he become available. So I guess what are your thoughts on making a run at Louis Eriksson, who is 30 years old and is an unrestricted free agent after this year?
Yeah, it's a tough spot because it's this team clearly needs something, and much like last season, it looks like they're just kind of waiting for the front office to give them a move. Last year, the team was just kind of, they needed goaltending, and their goaltending was horrible, but it feels like the players up front didn't really even start playing that well until they got Dubnyk. Kind of feels like more of the same this year. They're just waiting on that, that knight in shining armor to come in and score a pile of goals for him before the rest of the team starts trying too. So I would like the trade in that regard, and basically that regard only, because when you talk about the cupboard being fairly bare for this team, it's not an understatement, and it's actually kind of a little bit of a mini crisis for this franchise, I feel like, because there's nothing good in Iowa. Put it that way, Mike Riley, and it's the Mike Riley show in Iowa, and that's about it. All respect to Christoph Berchi and Michael Karan and whatnot, but and then the other prospects they have aren't really all that impressive either, and they don't have a whole lot of draft picks for the next 3 drafts, especially this upcoming one. This upcoming one, I think they have about 4 draft picks in 7 rounds, if that. So, I don't know. If you're going to make a deal, I'm assuming the price probably isn't going to be super cheap. You're probably looking at, maybe, I hate to say they deal the first-round pick for this upcoming draft because they still have it, but I'm hoping it's not that high, and I hope they wouldn't pay that price. Because I still think that this team has a young core that is just kind of waiting to break out, and obviously it hasn't happened any of them yet, really. But I don't know. I don't like the idea of blowing the wad on Louis Eriksson. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a good player. I think maybe he'd be a good fit. I don't know. His numbers right now are pretty good. I mean, he's got a 55% Corsi for. That would be up there on the Wild. He's scoring 2 points per 60 minutes. That would lead the Wild. But I don't know that he's, as much as I'd like to see him just for the psyche of this team, I don't know that he's, the silver bullet for this team either. So the price would have to be very affordable for me to really like a deal involving Louis Eriksson.
And I guess my point, if you're gonna use a first round pick on a rental,
yeah,
it better be a damn good rental.
Oh yeah.
Like all respect to Louis Eriksson, I wouldn't put him in that category.
Right.
Damn good. So I guess I would be kind of interested to see what he would give up to get Louis Eriksson, and I guess also the point: why would you want to get Louis Eriksson? It just seems more of another playmaker type, not somebody who's going to come in and score goals. Like, yeah, he's got 15 for Boston this year, but really more in his career. It seems like he's just been more of a playmaker. So I guess I question why you would want to go after a guy like Cam when your obvious need is for somebody who can score goals.
Well, that and to your credit, I mean, he's got 15 goals, but only 6 of them are even strength. So he's really feasting on the power play, which I don't know exactly what they've got going on there in Boston, but it wouldn't kill us to have a power play scorer. But maybe I don't know that it would affect him that positively. Like when he's got a vast majority of his goals on the power play, is that even going to translate if he were to come over here and just be kind of shoehorned into the top power play? I don't know. And then, like you said, he's got most of his points he's got 24 assists on the season, and 16 of those are even strength. So it's like, good God, another guy who passes before they shoot. I don't know if we can handle that, really. So, I don't know. It's a tough spot. I certainly would hope for a little bit more than Louis Eriksson if you're going to piss away a first-round pick on a rental. But, I don't know. We'll see. I hope that... I don't know. What do you think about Drouin? Do you think a first-round pick for Drouin? I mean, that seems to be like that might be the price because Lord knows his stock is dropping like a lead rake.
Well, I mean, I don't think anyone's giving up a first-round pick for Drouin at this point.
Really? Yeah, it's not surprising.
After all that crap that went down this last week with him just deciding that he's just not going to play until he gets moved, like that really dropped the price on him. Like, if Tampa was close to a deal that had been somewhat reported, or I think maybe his agent said that, then I don't know. It just didn't make a whole lot of sense for me to have him sit. Like, I understand, you don't want to get hurt, but that's the risk you take when you play anyway. And
he's playing in the AHL.
Get moved, you might as well just be out there playing, showing this team that you want me on your team. Not I'm just gonna sit out now. I'm done. Yeah,
it's called showcasing a player. Like that's something that's very common, and that's why he's in the AHL, so he can get more minutes. Because obviously, for whatever reason, he wasn't getting any minutes in Tampa. So, what you're doing by sitting out is basically you're slapping a giant malcontent label on your forehead, and teams are probably running screaming, and I don't blame them really, because it's like why would you want to subject your team to that? If this kid just decides that he's not going to play for a team anymore just because he, I get the situation, it's a tough situation, and maybe maybe it's not exactly what it seems, but it's like, if he's willing to do this, then he's just, you're looking at a holdout down the line, you're looking at another trade demand down the line, who knows? It certainly increases the odds of him being a pain later in his career if you're going to acquire a guy like that.
Crap, I totally forgot what the hell I was going to say. Just completely spaced on it.
Yeah, well, I just think that he,
come back to me.
He just obliterated any leverage that Steve Yzerman had at the time. If there was a trade imminent, as soon as the news came out that he was sitting out, I mean, there's no way that a trade was. If they had a trade before that, there's no way that same trade was going down because, suddenly Yzerman has absolutely zero leverage in the situation, and other GMs, I'd like to say for the most part, aren't dumb. And they
that's debatable.
That's why I said I'd like to say, they see that. They all saw the statements and whatnot that we saw that day, and it's just like, well, if you were going to get a first before, I don't know, maybe you're getting a second now, maybe it's a third. I find it hard to believe it'd be anything lower than a second, but yeah, I think depending on the team, a first round pick right now for Drew, and if you're Steve Yzerman, you're probably jumping on that just as kind of a delayed do-over, more or less. So even if you're dropping a couple of draft spots, you just kind of want to, cauterize this wound a little bit.
I figured out what I was going to bring up. I was going to say that Russo's Sunday Insider, he mentioned that that was the Druin situation was kind of a talker on, I think it was Thursday in the Wild locker room. So, there wouldn't be a guarantee that he'd be welcomed with open arms.
Oh yeah,
because how he kind of handled the situation, and so I guess we'll see what this week brings.
Yeah.
On that trade front, but I don't know. I still am kind of the belief that it has to be a ridiculous kind of move for the Wild to even make a move, but I'm also at the point now where I feel like they have to make some kind of major move just to give this team some kind of chance to go far in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because I don't see a bright future this year.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I was talking about, the Eriksson trade. It's like, I don't know, this team just feels like they're just sitting around waiting, to get some kind of excuse, yet again, to get some kind of excuse to catch fire, and they haven't gotten that yet. And I don't know, maybe after the All-Star break, maybe that's, they come out of that and they're like, hey, we're out of the playoffs now, come the All-Star break, because that could very well happen in the next 3 days. And maybe that's the motivating factor enough. It's like, hey, we were the best team in the league last year after the All-Star break, so let's do it again. And then you're kind of stuck in the same situation you were last year, I think, where you're basically playing a playoff game every night of the week for 3 months, and then you burn out in the playoffs, and that's just kind of what we saw last year. So I don't know. It's a tough spot. I'm not I don't know. I'm not super optimistic like you are. So as you are. So I don't know. It's kind of waiting on a trade, but at the same time, like I shudder to think what a trade is going to do to that already bare cupboard that we were talking about. So it's kind of 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other.
Yeah. I guess we'll switch over to our signature.
The signature
topic.
We need a good drop for this segment. I haven't. Maybe I'll come up with something with our All-Star break here.
But since the Wild only have one game this week against the Coyotes, it's to no surprise we're going to discuss the Coyotes' uniform history, which does not include the Winnipeg Jets.
No, unfortunately.
We'll go over them when we actually hit on the Winnipeg Jets.
Right.
But initial thoughts on the Jets. Or not the Jets, the Coyotes.
Well, we talked about this. Actually, this is something that we talked about before we even started this segment early in the season, because they played the Yotes pretty early on. And the Yotes were one of the few teams that had any kind of jersey changes here because they added these black, basically these black biceps to their jerseys for some inexplicable reason. And I think you can go back and listen to that. I'm sure it's going to be the same thing, but these jerseys that they have now, just it's kind of a bore fest for me. I think they're going for the kind of cool, adobo type Arizona look, but it's just like as kitschy as it was and as goofy as it was, I do like their initial jerseys, the Robo Coyote as it were. I do prefer that jersey. I think their black jersey was just outstanding. I should probably pick up a Keith Kachuk version of that at some point in my lifetime. So I don't know. I'd much prefer their original jerseys just because it was so Arizona. Like you could take the logo off and you knew exactly where that team was from just by the piping on the jerseys. And then they had that weird kind of, that weird like Aztec-y Mayan kind of, real jaggedy coyote, but it worked and it kind of was a little endearing that they were try to make it their own so much instead of the logo now. I mean, it just looks like a crying puppy. Like I get they're going for a howling coyote, but it's like it just doesn't do anything for me at all. And their color scheme's bland, and their jerseys, outside of the unnecessary black sleeves, are pretty bland, and it's just kind of I guess encompassed this franchise for the last decade at least.
Yeah, we feel pretty similar here on Coyotes jerseys.
Yeah.
Obviously, Robot Coyote would be the preferred jersey choice, which I think they have had a throwback night this year.
Oh, really?
I don't know if they have or yet or whatever, but I know they are doing that again this year. So I applaud them for at least having that as a throwback at least once a year.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I was indifferent on their ones they were wearing up until last year with the howling coyote, but then the black biceps they introduced this year was just kind of a like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's like why
are you doing this? So, and it is kind of a short history for the Coyotes. They've only had 2 alternate jerseys in their history, if you can believe that, and neither of them were really that good.
Yeah.
You had the one in the late 90s, early 2000s that was green, and it just kind of looked like it was themed based off the Simpsons Chili Cook-Off episode. It really did.
Yeah, I mean, the dismembered coyote head in the middle of it, like that isn't so bad, but the whole like mountains and cactus at the bottom thing, like they took what they had with the regular black jerseys where they had like the kind of the Aztec-y type piping and whatnot, and they just completely jumped the shark. And they tried to make, like, anytime you're trying to make a naturescape on a sports jersey, just stop. Just stop. I mean, the Wolves kind of got away with it with the little trees, because it wasn't a naturescape, that was just piping. But if you're trying to make, like, the full-on front and back of your jersey to make it look like a setting or a place, stop. Just immediately stop, back away from the drawing board. We saw it with Tampa, it looked gross. We saw it with Phoenix, it looked gross. Just don't do it. I don't understand why they feel like they need, to be like, yeah, it was Arizona. If you can't tell, by the logo that you probably recognize already, you see these mountains and cactuses and a moon and stuff. Like, yeah, we freaking get it. You're from Arizona. You don't need to put, like, the topography of your state on your jersey for us to understand where you're from.
That jersey is just as
it's
90s
terrible
as it gets.
It was. I mean, that's one of those classic third jerseys that we laugh about from the 90s, and their newer one, or the one they only used for a couple of years, that black one. It's like, ugh, why?
Had that jumping.
Yeah, instead of a crying coyote, it just had like one that looks like it's competing in some kind of Purina dog challenge, and it just doesn't. It did absolutely nothing for me, and it's just kind of like, hey, we need a third jersey. What should we do? Well, I don't know. Well, my son's got a pretty good idea. Let's use that.
Yeah, I think that just about covers the Coyotes jersey history. It's not a
It's not a long one. It's not a pretty one.
no, but yeah. I guess we kind of have a little shorter podcast than usual, but we're going to close with this little anecdote from NHL History Girl on Twitter from what was that Thursday? Looks like Thursday.
I believe so.
This just wrecked my mind in so many ways. I can't even begin. Yeah, and what was a day that Ben had mentioned to me that was clearly themed for me.
Oh, she was just right in your wheelhouse that day.
Just on point with the NHL history tweets. She fires this one out early afternoon on Thursday. Fun fact, in the summer of 1996, Teemu Selanne threw a Star Trek themed party at his house in Finland. Oh, man.
And if you don't know, obviously, I mean, Giles is a huge Teemu Selanne fan, huge Mighty Ducks fan, as we've talked about, and also a huge Star Trek fan. So, I mean, this, I posted, I sent it to him, and then I replied after he basically, orgasmed via Twitter, that I was like, the only thing that could possibly improve upon this tweet is if Emilio Estevez of Mighty Ducks fame, Coach Bombay himself, was at said Finnish Star Trek party. So, I mean, that really, I don't know, it touched a lot of bases for you, I feel like.
Yeah, there were a lot of feels from that one tweet alone. And now I have a new life goal, which is to watch Star Trek with Teemu Selanne.
I like the idea of you asking him if he preferred Kirk or Picard. I think that should be I don't know if that should be a standard question you ask everybody, but if you know that somebody is even a remote Star Trek fan, I mean, that's kind of like the question, isn't it?
It is. And, I'll be honest, I don't know. I think if I ever had to pick, as much as I hate picking because I like them both in their own ways.
Sure.
I probably have to give the slight nod to Picard, but
yeah.
That just brings on a whole mess of debates on Twitter. So I generally try to steer clear of that. So.
Them's fighting words for a lot of people. So
yeah.
But I never even saw very much, if at all, of the original Star Trek franchise, and I I'm not a big Star Trek fan like you, but I have seen a fair share of Next Generation, so I am familiar with that cast. So yeah, I would go Picard on that, but only just by default because I don't think I've ever literally watched an entire episode of the original Star Trek, so that kind of disqualifies me from the argument, I suppose.
I've seen the series.
Yeah.
Their movies were way better.
Sure.
But I mean the original series I felt like it was maybe a little bit too ahead of its time. They had the right cast and stuff, but it just, I don't know, the episodes were kind of a little bit long, and I don't know, it was always just kind of the same basic plot or outline of an episode,
well, that was a time where people weren't doing a whole lot of science fiction. It wasn't like its own genre like it is now, or like it even was starting in, I don't know, the 80s. It just seemed like they were a little bit ahead of their time with the science fiction genre and really creating an entire show that was completely centered around that. So it kind of came off a little hokey, I feel like, just because they hadn't quite refined the whole science fiction, I don't know, I guess you'd call it a drama, but the whole science fiction TV show thing yet. It was still very much, in the movies, and that was about it.
Yeah, and I don't know, it just, every episode just felt like, you were going to get some kind of Kirk fight with somebody.
Him nailing an alien,
Bones yells.
Red guy dies.
Jim, and, it's just the same 5 things happen every episode. It was just, I don't know, it got repetitive.
Yeah.
I guess, but yeah. So life goal debate: Kirk versus Picard with Teemu Selanne. Should we ever cross paths?
Yes.
The rare chance we ever do. So that's kind of my last little note here for this show.
Uh-huh.
Do you have any final things to add?
No, I don't. I don't have anything for this week. Like we said, it's only one game this week, so I'm not going to get too high or low on depending on the outcome. And I don't know. I'd like to see a glimmer of hope from this team. That's all I can really ask for at this point. And then the All-Star game is, we'll talk about it because we're podcasting Saturday night at the Twins Daily Winter Meltdown. But the All-Star game is coming up, and I couldn't care less.
Yeah, I'll if I'm well enough to move on Sunday after the meltdown, I'll probably tune in the All-Star game just to watch John Scott try and play. Yeah, I agree that hopefully we can see some kind of glimmer of hope. Although I don't know if you can get a glimmer of hope out of just one game.
Yep.
In a week, so I guess we'll have to see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like you said, we're going to try and get our audio equipment polished up here and take it to the Twins Daily Winter Meltdown. Hopefully, we're going to probably a more all-star themed show. We're going to try and get some guests on the podcast. Probably get it right out of the way before we get too many free beers in this.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get at least a couple of people on the show. Some people who haven't been on before.
Mm-hmm.
I know Dan will probably drop in for a couple of minutes just to get some trolls in.
Just to annoy you.
Yep. I just don't want to keep anybody from the party too long, so it'll just be a couple minutes for each person. So.
Yep.
But yeah, look for that next weekend. And of course, you can find me and Ben and the rest of the Wild Extra crew writing at wildextra.com. You can also find the other podcast on Wild Extra, the 5 Minute Major. Not sure if they're going to have an episode up
It might.
on Monday, but they probably will. Just kind of vent about the team as they go into the All-Star break.
Yeah.
Unless Doubles gets stuck in a drive-thru again. We will be back next week on what should be a pretty fun episode. So we will talk to you next week.
See ya.
Was without a doubt the worst episode ever.
I'm here to show the world. I'm here to show the world.